Hello, my name is Wes Hickey, and I am the chair of the Department of Educational Leadership at the University of Texas at Tyler. And this is this week's 5 and 5. Now, one of the more recent educational news items that has come out is that standards are rising nationwide. But one of the questions that I get when it comes to this is how do we get a student from an area in which they are performing very poorly to an area in which they are performing at least acceptably and hopefully being a high achiever? And I always state that it is not an easy thing to do, but there is a process in place that you have to do to be able to get there. You cannot bypass the process. So let's look at a personal level. Over to the right, you see my oldest daughter, who is a pitcher in college. She was not always a great pitcher. When she started off, she struggled because she wasn't very strong, had a hard time even getting the ball to the plate. But she wanted to be good, and so we sat down and we talked about what we needed to do to get there. So early on, it was a matter of just getting strong enough to get it to the plate. Then we started working on catching it when and throwing strikes during just practice. And so sometimes I would give her the benefit of the doubt on strikes and have a big strike zone. As she got better, it would get tighter. And then once it got to be pretty good in practice, you had to get to the point of her being able to handle it with someone up to bat, and then ultimately be able to handle the psychological pressure of the game. You cannot bypass any of those things. And so that's what we're seeing right now with my younger daughter, which took place in a scrimmage. She's not a pitcher, but because she's been around softball all her life, she kind of understands it better than many other girls. So they ask her to go out there and pitch. But she's not very effective now because she is attempting to bypass all of the steps you have to get to be able to be successful. Build the muscle memory, get the technical skills down correctly, understand what it feels like in a game, etc. You cannot avoid going through the process to go from low achieving to high achieving. There are steps you have to take. And this is true in all the little league sports that you see, is that I hear parents many times yell to their kid and say, oh, come on, and whatever it is down the line, you got to get down, you got to do this, you got to do that. But the truth of the matter is that their child just simply has not yet gone through the processes they need to go through to be successful. You can't bypass anything. Experience, uh, practice, all those things are very important to be able to be successful. And that's also true when it comes to education. If you have a kid that's not performing in any way, whether it be with discipline, whether it be with the grades they make, whether it be socially, you can work with this, but you have to have a plan in place, and you have to you can't bypass anything. There are steps that have to be taken for them to get from where they are to where you want them to be. And here are the steps that ultimately I believe are important. First of all, I think you have to not take the lack of success personally. Now, I think you can be very serious about what you're doing, but without being personally offended by a student who is not at the level that you would like them to be. Truth of the matter is, we're all different. Some of us take longer, some of us have less talent, some of us are not genetically predisposed to certain behaviors. Some of us come from an environment that is very tough for us to come from. But success does not happen overnight. And so those that are, continue on with the process even when things get tough are the ones that are very successful. You need to evaluate the process regularly to determine if the strategies being used are effective. Because sometimes what you're doing just isn't going to work. And so you need to make sure that you're not so hung up on what you're doing that you can't make adjustments when necessary. And then be persistent. I'm telling you, nothing beats consistent effort. You ever watch any time in sports, you're watching academically, the great teachers that you have in place, is that they understand that how you look on day one does not necessarily have to be how you look when you're two-thirds of the way through the season or two-thirds of the way through the school year. Is that if you persistently and consistently get after the student in ways that are effective and that you're adjusting if they're not, and if things aren't going well, you sit down at times, you pull other people in, you say, hey, let's brainstorm. We're having problems with this kid. What do we do? And you have a very, very good chance of success. Happens time after time. UT Tyler, we want to be here for you. Let us know what we can do.